City.
I tried to call this when I saw Thornton coming on the way that we did. When Rashee Rice comes back, he is a do-everything wide receiver. He makes it easy on the offense. He makes it easier on Patrick Mahomes. Only 42 yards, but 7 catches, 2 touchdowns, and on every pass Mahomes threw to him, he was no more than 6 yards up the field. 80% of his yards came on yak. That allows for Mahomes to get the ball out of his hands and put the defensive line on their heels.
Guys, watching what that team looked like on this past weekend, we know the Raiders are really struggling, but watching what that team looked like last weekend, is Kansas City now once again the clear-cut team to beat in the AFC?
Well, part of me says yes, part of me says no, because I called the Colts overrated last week.
Right.
And they look really good at playing football right now. So I'm going to say the Colts are the team to beat in the
There you
AFC.
go.
Really?
Yeah.
As an apology.
Hey, that's Will on the highway. He catches little skid. He's overcorrecting
Look,
big time.
Rarely am I going to say anything out of pocket on this show. That was one where I got to go back. I got to watch the tape and be hard on myself. I have to be better.
I appreciate that. We had this conversation the other day. Look, the Daniel Jones story is one of my favorite stories in the entire NFL. But if those two teams meet up in a playoff situation, you get a playoff scenario, and you got Kansas City coming into Indianapolis, Patrick Mahomes against Daniel Jones, I think the world is going to expect Kansas City to win that game.
Yeah, I think the world and myself would expect at this time in October, I would sit there and say the Kansas City Chiefs would beat the Indianapolis Colts. Now, I can change that opinion at any time. You can look at a lot of stats by the Colts.
You do have free will.
A lot of stats.
Right.
I have a lot of free will going on here.
Yeah.
But when you see the Chiefs at full capacity on the offensive side of the ball, as much criticism we gave them early in the year, they deserve just as much praise right now. They look unbelievable.
All right, let's go to one more wide receiver watch, and we're going.
Gone exactly as hoped. An 0-7 start to the year might signal that it's time for a fire sale with the 2025 NFL trade deadline less than 2 weeks away. For more, I'm joined by CBS NFL analysts Emery Hunt and John Breech. Guys, let's talk Breece Hall. He's not under contract past this season, so it wouldn't be so surprising if the Jets traded him instead of waiting for him to walk in free agency for nothing in return. Garrett Padell wrote an article for CBSSports.com recently highlighting top potential landing spots for Hall, naming the Chiefs, Chargers, Cardinals, Steelers, and Texans. Let's start with Kansas City. Emery, what about the Chiefs would be a good fit for the Jets running back?
Well, the fact that they can add explosiveness in the backfield, it would give them something that they had with a younger version of Kareem Hunt, someone that you really had to game plan for and really had to focus on to key on to lock down their run game and opened up everything for the passing attack. But they don't have that right now. They have a banger in, the older version of Kareem Hunt, but, they still have Pacheco, but they don't have a guy that can legitimately hit the home run from the backfield. That's what Breece Hall will provide.
Yeah, and when you look at the Chiefs offense right now with Isaiah Pacheco in there slotted as the starter, I really feel like Andy Reid wants more out of the starting running back spot. He's complacent with what he has because it's working. It's kind of a Band-Aid on things. But if there was a way for the Chiefs to upgrade at not too of an expensive of a price, I think that Reid would be more than happy to do it. I mean, you look at Pacheco's stats this year. He's averaging just 38.7 rush yards per game. He has not topped 60 yards in a single game this season. And when you talk about the Chiefs passing game, you would like to see a running back contribute a little bit, but Pacheco really hasn't been a great weapon out of the backfield at all. I don't think he's topped one catch in any game. He hasn't had 2 receptions in a single game this year. So if there is a chance to upgrade for the Chiefs, I do think they should take it because this offense is looking better every week, and that feels like it could be the final piece of the puzzle that's missing.
Right. Now, the Chiefs would be the sexy destination, right? They were the Super Bowl runner-up last season. They're in the midst of building a potential dynasty. But, Breech, I know the Chargers are a team that you see as a top fit for him. They could definitely use a running back after Najee here.
So all right, I'm going to say not right now because I've said this many times. I think the Colts are the best team in the NFL. The Chiefs have me scared because Rashee Rice coming back makes this thing tighter than I would like to admit because both defenses, they're both doing their thing. They're very similar. The only thing I would give the edge to with the Colts is their run game versus the Chiefs' run game, just the explosiveness of Jonathan Taylor. That again, I liken to what the Eagles did last year.
Green, can I ask Jeff this? Because I think I'm a viewer at home. I'm thinking, okay, well, he's a Colts guy. But objectively, if we're going Chiefs wild card round going to Indianapolis,
right,
you would pick the Colts right now?
I would right now. If I see the Chiefs continue to progress like they progressed the last 2 weeks with Mahomes playing Jones, That's where I would hesitate, right? If it continues to move up, because what he does for their offense, and again, we've only seen it for 1 week, 2 touchdowns right off the gate. I mean, you're like, and then that lets the Spags defense really start to turn it on. So yeah, I'm definitely not wiping the Chiefs off this list, but I'm holding on for one more week.
Let me show you.
One more week. Hold tight, Colts.
Let's put up D17 because the Chiefs, they're getting scary. I mean, there's a reason for you to be scared.
Yeah.
In their last 5 games, they're averaging just a tick under 30 points. It's their best 5-game span since 2022.
Yeah.
That's when they still had Tyreek Hill. That's the year in which they finished first in the league in scoring offense. Look, let's face it. Getting Rashee Rice back changes everything. It moves everyone to where they should be. Rex Ryan said the other day, he's a top 5 receiver in the league. No one ever talks about him that way. And let's not even get into an argument about that. He's certainly, obviously, a great player. No team in the league, Neek, is going to make an acquisition around the deadline here more significant than him coming back.
Yeah, the argument for the Colts in this case is like you have to look at the full body of the season. They've been better for a longer time.
Yeah.
The problem with matching that up against the Chiefs, the Chiefs went to the Super Bowl every year for the last. They've been in championship
5 of 6,
since Mahomes took over. So if we're matching up track records, then all we needed for the Chiefs was them to show us a little life. And in 3 weeks now, they didn't win all the games, but in 3 weeks now, this offense has looked like an offense that you can trust. And in the modern NFL, if you have an offense that can score like that, then it gets pretty scary. The point that you would make, I think, is the Colts offense has looked like that all season.
All year. And I will say this, the game they did lose against the Jags, Mahomes ain't throwing that. He throws that once a year. He throws it once a year, right? Going in the red zone on the 1 yard line, he dumps it off and he takes it back all the way. That's just not going to happen. Like if you're betting on Mahomes to give you the game, you're betting poor odds. And so you ain't boosting that bet. So
it goes without saying that obviously Rice, lifts all the boats and everything. But this is what they were saying when I was talking to them the first month. Like, hey, hang on, we don't have Xavier Worthy 100%. We don't have Rashee Rice. Let's judge us then. And it does seem like on a 1-game sample size against the Raiders, like, all right, no one's stopping this team. But then again,
it was 31-0. So, I mean, I don't care. I get you saying it's the Raiders. It's not playing against the Colts in that situation. They beat an NFL team 31-0, and they was kneeling it out with 3 minutes left and benched their starters in the fourth quarter.
Colts beat them 40-6.
Oh, my gosh.
So, anyway.
I'm just saying, believe it or not.
We'll have this fight all year long. But I want to show you something else that happened. Because this one legit season. And so I have a question about the Cowboys. Because, look, we all understand Jerry Jones actually had a very good offseason with one enormous exception, right? He brought in George Pickens. He brought in Javonte Williams. He did a lot of really good things. Trading away Micah. If they had Micah Parsons right now, we might be talking about them as a Super Bowl team. Could they make a trade for something on defense that would make them a Super Bowl contender in your eyes right now?
I mean, they should try. I don't know that they can because what they've lost in Micah Parsons was the centerpiece. We talked about Jonathan Taylor being the centerpiece of the Colts offense. They lost that centerpiece of their defense. And finding someone to replace that may improve their defense some, but I'm not sure that it gets them to a level to be like legitimate contenders. But the way that they're playing right now on offense, you have to try something.
Max Crosby, could they get the Raiders are terrible. They're going to be terrible for a while. They might as well trade their best player and start rebuilding or all that kind of stuff.
No, you're laughing. Look, it's out there. And here's the deal. He did sign a 3-year extension in March with the new ownership group and the new GM, John Spytek.
That hurts.
They all guaranteed money.
There goes my idea.
Yes.
No, but it's been out there because of how bad they are, and they are awful right now. But Max Crosby is a cornerstone piece, and I did their game week 2 against the Chargers, and to a man, everyone said he's the first guy in, he's the culture setter. I just can't imagine the Raiders trading Max Crosby, although if I'm the Cowboys, I'm calling every hour on the hour, can we get Max Crosby?
So the same Cowboys, let me back this up.
Right.
So the same Cowboys
Right.
who traded away their best player,
Yes.
their pass rusher.
Right.
Now you want them to call the Las Vegas Raiders to get their best pass rusher?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Because again, every move that Jerry makes doesn't make sense collectively. Like that's what's so frustrating about them because they had Micah Parsons and they didn't want to re-sign him. I just feel like with the Cowboys, I don't think they're just one move away. And this is not a team that likes to make moves. They clearly, before this offseason, they don't like to make these sort of trade deadline type of
They like
big
to make
moves.
moves like the day before the season.
I slightly disagree.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced they aren't just one player away. Like, that offense is that good. And they just, their defense is. And
you think they're one player away? Yes or
well, I think that they need something that generates some big plays on their defense. They're not going to become a good defense this year. But what they
what is
can
Jerry
do.
supposed to say?
Jerry just came out and said that their best part of their team was being able to rush the passer. So
I'm not sure what he's watching, but they're really not doing that well.
That's what I'm saying. So it depends on like where he thinks he needs to trade for, right? Where does he think that they need to get better in the middle of their defense? So that's the part that you don't trust with Jerry is if he's telling you that already that's where he is.
Contract things aside, if you put Max Crosby on that team, I think Eberflus's defense needs a strong defensive line.
For sure.
That improves it. So if you connect this trade with the Micah Parsons trade, and if it does happen, then you end up trading Micah Parsons, and say you send a 1 to get Max Crosby. You trade Micah Parsons for Kenny Clark and Max Crosby. That feels like a more logical way to build a team than what they've done so far. It starts to make Jerry's plan, if there is one, make a little bit more sense.
It would look like it was a plan.
I would have rather had Micah than all this. However, I could see how.
Final word, quick.
They just need the bare minimum on defense.
Right.
Their offense is that good, and you saw when Bland has a pick 6, suddenly it's like, oh, if you get one big play on defense, we can compete.
That's it. Play with your hair on fire. Try and force a couple of turnovers and see if you can get anything done. Actually constitutes a meeting. I'm posting this. I'm cryptically posting biblical verses. I mean, what the hell is going on?
Let me just help you right here, dude. These dudes don't care. I'm going to tell you right now, you're in the locker room, I don't care. I don't care what he's saying. I don't care. Catch the freaking ball, score touchdowns, we'll keep winning. I'll be dead honest. You can do whatever you want, bro. We're going to block. We're going to do our stuff. But, like, the distraction part for players, they can compartmentalize better than anybody else in the world. What Kimberly said is right. Sirianni, it's a nightmare, right? Kevin Patullo, it's a nightmare because you got to answer every question. When you're a player in that locker room and your job and your focus is winning football games, you ignore all the nonsense that's out of your control because your job is on the line. You got to take care of your business. And there are a lot of dudes on the offensive side that got to improve to get back to where they want. But it is not players aren't nearly as worried and concerned as the head coach.
Eric, our producer, I'm staying here. We'll get back to the Russell Wilson stuff later. We need to stay. This, to me, this is why, if you want to not trust that the Eagles are okay, this is why you don't trust that it's okay. After what should have been a monster win for them last week, we're dealing in this.
5-2 with wins over the Rams, the Chiefs, the Vikings, the Bucks. You would think just on paper, Eagles should be thrilled. I would also add this. The Brandon Graham thing was in the works. It was happening in the last couple of weeks. He's been working on it every day. The Philly media and everyone who's an Eagles person looked at it as, BG's coming back. I have to think that they were like, we need that leadership.
Yes.
And they saw him after
force in there.
for that. And that's a bad sign if you're a team that's coming off a Super Bowl championship that you need to bring back a veteran who rode off on his white horse and was done and did it as a Super Bowl champion.
But remember that, right? Remember how they finished. The dude's reading a book. The guy that we're talking about is tweeting is reading a book on the sideline last year. If you don't think they can work through it, so when you're like, it is in turmoil, they live in turmoil, but some houses want to be in chaos, bro. This is a house that likes to live in chaos.
I agree.
And that's
I'm not saying they can't work through it. They probably can.
The price tag, I think, is going to be just a little too high for Kansas City to make a move like this at the deadline. He's a former first rounder. He had 10.5 sacks last year. And it would probably cost somewhere in the neighborhood of a second, just given the production this guy's already had. And also, he's only a part-time player for you. He's not going to be starting for the Kansas City Chiefs. He really shouldn't even be starting for the New York Jets right now. The guy cannot play against the run. And I think for the Chiefs, they really don't love that mold of edge defenders. Steve Spagnuolo, over the course of his career, has not trended towards the undersized guys. So this one would be a little surprising to me, but he would be a massive upgrade in terms of just pure pass rushing juice off the edge.
And you know what, with the way that Miami season is going, it really feels like it's going to be a fire sale down there in Miami. So let's get to another edge there in Jalen Phillips, someone that the Chiefs could use. In your eyes, JP, so what would that look like in terms of a trade there if they want to get him?
I think if you want to get Jalen Phillips, the first thing you have to understand is that he is going to deal with a lot of injury problems. It's been a litany of injuries for him ever since entering the league, even before he entered the league. But because he's still fairly young, because he is still one of the better pass rush winners for Miami, it feels like they are going to have to start and looking at trade assets moving forward into the future. So I think a guy like Jalen Phillips can really help in a sort of similar way to Will McDonald in terms of winning with speed, winning with hand usage and technique, instead of just going straight speed to power. But I do think some of the injury history and the fact that he's going to be an upcoming free agent might scare Kansas City off a little bit. But if you just want a 1-year rental, see if you can get some more pass rush in your chase for a title, I think Jalen Phillips makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, to me, this is the guy I want if I'm Kansas City. He fits their mold, right? He's 6'5", 262. He's a bigger edge rusher, and he's been productive this season. Just Miami really hasn't given him the opportunity because they haven't played with a lot of leads. But 22 pressures this season, and he, like I said, fits the mold and wouldn't come too expensive. I think that's the other thing. I said a second probably for Will McDonald. This could be like a late third or even like a fourth. Could he get it done for a guy like Jalen Phillips because of that injury history, because he's torn his ACL and his Achilles each of the last 2 seasons. But despite those injuries, the guy's still playing ball and would be a big upgrade for the Chiefs.
All right, next up, JP, we're talking about D tackle Shelby Harris. So how do they make that happen there in KC?
I think Cleveland is in another spot where not only do they need to start acquiring assets to move forward in 2026, but their defensive line is absolutely loaded. When they get Mike Hall back, there are going to be a lot of reps that are going to be taken up by his return, and Shelby Harris is going to find himself on the odd man out. I think you're going to have that rotation of Mike Hall, Mason Graham, and Malik Collins, and then the old man in Shelby Harris does find himself on the other side of that. But what Shelby Harris brings to Kansas City potentially is just a guy who creates havoc, whether it be against the run, whether it be as a pass rusher on pass rush games and loops. It feels like Spags will really like that type of guy. And it's not going to cost a lot because of his age. So I think this is a deal that Kansas City is probably going to look forward to making. And if they do make it, we're going to look back and be like, oh, that was a really smart deal.
And it's one that, of all these moves, would cost the least. Like a day 3 pick swap. Guy's 34 years old. And as JP said, he really won't have a role here in Cleveland very soon. Costing $3.5 million a year. Like, it is almost a no-brainer if a guy like this is available. And it's an opportunity just to bolster that interior of their defensive line. That's been probably one of their weakest points on the roster. Outside of Chris Jones, obviously, they just haven't had a guy who, as JP alluded to, can create chaos. So if a guy like this is available, it feels like a no-brainer for a Chiefs or some sort of contender to add a piece to the puzzle.
All right, finally, I want to talk about some corners. And the Saints, they have just 1 win on the season, and it just looks like it gets from bad to worse, right? So, JP, should they move on from Alontae Taylor?
I think so. It feels like every time we talk about the Saints, somebody's going to get traded. Somebody's going to end up on the trading block. And I feel like Alontae Taylor is going to be that guy on the defensive side of the ball. The dude just causes havoc. We talk about creating chaos. Alontae Taylor is one of the better blitzing nickelbacks in the NFL. He's also going to create plays on the ball. He's going to be a sure tackler. And I think all those things ring well with what Spags wants in his secondary. I think the secondary has actually played a lot better to go in this recent stretch of the win streak they're going through instead of the first part of the season where they really couldn't tackle. So adding another guy like Taylor, it allows you to be versatile with Trent McDuffie. Both guys can play outside in. And I think Spags will love a guy like Taylor who can just create problems as a blitzer.
Yeah, to me, he feels like the kind of guy that the Chiefs signed in free agency, and then all of a sudden he's way better there than he was at his previous stop because he is a press man corner who, once Dennis Allen left, like really isn't getting to work the same way he did previously. I think he's very talented, but he is a little boomer bust. And it would give you, as JP alluded to, that pass rushing threat. They haven't really, when they moved Trent McDuffie outside and put Shamari Connor in the slot, you really haven't had that same ability to have that physical presence there from the slot and be able to play man coverage the same way. So it would be a big upgrade in terms of pure coverage ability from Shamari Connor.
All right, and lastly, another 1-win team over in Tennessee on the Titans, Roger McCreary. So, JP, how can he help the Chiefs?
I think you're thinking about Roger McCreary the same way you're talking about Alontae Taylor in terms of outside end versatility. You have a guy who's a little bit undersized, but you cannot account for how much dog he has in him. He's such a feisty player at the catch point, and Tennessee is going to be starting to move on from a lot of these guys just to get more picks to help their roster moving forward. So I think McCreary helps out a lot in Kansas City because of what he can do with bringing Trent McDuffie either outside or in. You can play more matchup football, and then he just brings a level of an edge. He brings an edge to this team that I think is going to be really helpful, and it moves Shamari Connor back to dime linebacker, back to safety, where he feels a little bit more comfortable instead of putting him in the slot.
See, I hate this move, but not for the Chiefs. I hate this for the Titans. We can't just rob this entire roster. They have no one. And this is like one of your few guys that you drafted. Second round, 35th overall pick, and it worked out for you. Just re-sign them. Like, you got to have some positive momentum here. You can't just strip this roster of everything. Maybe trade the vets, but this is a guy who's going into he's only in his 4th season. He's going into his 5th season next year. Just re-sign him, take the win, make sure you have some talent on this roster going forward.
Yeah, they need all the help they can get when it comes to talent there over in Tennessee. All right, so we hit 5 players that Kansas City should target at the trade deadline. None of them are on offense, by the way. Don't have a running back in there, where a lot of fans, JP, think that is a need for Kansas City. So you think this offense is set moving forward and then past the deadline if they want to run this thing back and get to a Super Bowl and maybe win it this time?
I think their deadline deal was Rashee Rice. That was their version of a deadline deal. They got their guy back, and I think it helped move the offense a lot more. And with their run game, I understand wanting a running back in this scenario, but I do think the trio of Kareem Hunt, Isaiah Pacheco, and Brashard Smith actually kind of works in this offense. They don't need anybody who really can be like a bell cow in this offense because of how much they throw the ball, but they all fill out certain roles in special ways. And with Brashard Smith continuing to become more of a factor in this offense, you just worry about taking away some reps and some snaps from him as he continues to grow in his role.
Yeah, I'm just looking defense. That's what's going to limit you. That's where they've been kind of up and down this season. Offensively, I don't even want to hand the ball off. Like, the way this passing game is going, we don't need to run the football.
The Chiefs just lost their most promising rookie defensive lineman to a season-ending injury, and nobody's talking about how catastrophic this actually is for Kansas City's championship hopes. While everyone's busy celebrating wins and talking about three-peats, Brett Veach is scrambling behind closed doors because the defensive line situation has gone from concerning to absolutely desperate in the span of one brutal hit. This isn't just about depth anymore. This is about survival, and the clock is ticking louder than anyone wants to admit. The nightmare scenario that Chiefs fans were quietly worried about just became reality in the most brutal way possible. Omar Norman Lott, the rookie defensive tackle who many analysts called the steal of the draft when Kansas City snagged him in the second round, is done for the season after tearing his ACL against the Raiders. And man, the way it happened makes it even worse. The kid was already on the ground, completely out of the play, when Raiders tackle Stone Forsythe decided to drive his full body weight right into Norman Lott's knee. Whether that dirty hit actually caused the tear or not, we'll never know for sure, but what we do know is that officials immediately flagged it as unnecessary roughness. Norman Lott knew something was seriously wrong instantly. He chucked his helmet like 20 yards down the field and was writhing in pain while Patrick Mahomes and rookie Ashton Gillott helped him off. The symbolism of that moment hit different. Two guys who genuinely cared helping their brother off the field, knowing his promising rookie campaign just ended in the most painful way imaginable. But here's where it gets really scary for Kansas City. With Norman Lott gone, the Chiefs now have exactly 3 healthy interior defensive linemen on the entire roster. Let that sink in for a second. 3 guys: Jerry Tillery, Chris Jones, who can play anywhere but can't play every single snap, and Derek Nunati, who Pro Football Focus has currently ranked dead last among all qualifying interior defensive linemen in the entire NFL. Not second to last, not bottom 5, literally the worst. So yeah, when people ask if the Chiefs need to make a trade, that's not even a real question anymore. This went from it would be nice to add depth to we literally don't have enough warm bodies to run a proper defensive line rotation in one devastating injury. The reports coming out from Diana Rossini at The Athletic and Matt Miller at ESPN confirm what everyone already suspected. The Chiefs were already actively shopping for defensive line help even before Norman Lott went down, but now that search has gone from casual browsing to full-on panic buying. Brett Veach is fielding calls, making calls, probably losing sleep over this because he knows that other teams around the league can smell the desperation. And here's the brutal part: nobody wants to help the villain. The Chiefs are the team everyone loves to hate, the dynasty. Everyone wants to see fall, so you better believe that GMs across the league are going to try to extract maximum value knowing Kansas City is backed into a corner. The price just went up, and Veach knows it. Thinking about this whole situation, I genuinely believe the Chiefs were going to make a move regardless of what happened to Norman Lott. The pass rush has been anemic all season, and the interior pressure outside of Chris Jones has been basically non-existent. But losing Norman Lott didn't just make a trade more likely, it made it absolutely mandatory mandatory. There's no getting around this anymore. No coaching scheme that can mask having only 3 interior linemen. No amount of Steve Spagnuolo genius that can manufacture pressure when your defensive tackles are gassed by the third quarter. Veach has to pull the trigger on something before the deadline, and honestly, I think he's gonna have to overpay to make it happen. So who's actually available and realistic for Kansas City to target? Let's talk about the pass rushers first, because that's where the Chiefs have been hurting the most. Matthew Judon from the Dolphins is probably the most intriguing name on the market right now. The dude was a surprise inactive this past Sunday, and that's not normal for Judon at all. He's been a proven pass rusher in this league for years. Gave the Chiefs problems plenty of times when he was terrorizing them from Baltimore. The comparison that keeps getting thrown around is Terrell Suggs, and honestly, that's pretty spot on. You're bringing in a veteran who's seen everything, knows how to win, and can come in to fill a complimentary role without needing to be the star. He wouldn't have to be the guy carrying the pass rush, just a solid rotational piece who can give you quality snaps and spell the younger guys when they need a breather. Then you've got Jermaine Johnson from the Jets, and this one's fascinating for completely different reasons. Johnson is way younger than Judon, so if you're thinking long-term value, he makes a ton of sense. The problem is the Jets already exercised his 5th-year option, which means he's guaranteed $13 million for the 2026 season. That's a massive commitment, and with the Chiefs already projected to be $30 million over the cap next year with only 35 players under contract, taking on that kind of money is going to require some serious financial wizardry from Veach. But here's the thing, Johnson wants out of New York. He basically said as much in that cryptic tweet about not knowing how much more he can give without change. When a player is openly begging to be traded, that usually drives the price down a bit because teams know they've lost all leverage. The Jets are a dumpster fire right now. Their season is cooked, and Johnson could be available for cheaper than you'd think considering his talent level. Bradley Chubb is another Dolphins pass rusher who makes sense on paper, but his contract situation is complicated. He's locked up through 2027 with a base salary of over $19 million next year and $18 million the year after. The Chiefs would only owe about $12 million for the rest of this season, which is manageable if they do some restructuring, but committing to those future years is rough. Still, if Miami is willing to eat some of that money, Chubb would be a massive upgrade. And then there's Trey Hendrickson from the Bengals, who would be absolutely perfect for what the Chiefs need. But let's be real, Cincinnati isn't trading him. The Bengals are stubborn as hell, and even though their season is teetering on the edge of collapse, they're not going to help Kansas City of all teams. The money doesn't work anyway. On the defensive tackle side, the name that keeps popping up is Calais Campbell from the Cardinals. Now, I know what you're thinking. The dude is 37 years old, isn't he washed? But here's the crazy thing, Campbell is still balling. He's already got 3 sacks this season. He's excellent against the run, and his cap hit for the rest of the year is under $2 million. That's insane value for a player of his caliber. Arizona is going absolutely nowhere this season. They'd probably be thrilled to get a 6th or 7th round pick for a veteran who's not part of their future anyway. Campbell has been one of the better defensive tackles in football for over a decade, and even at his age, he's 10 times better than Derek Nunati. That's not an exaggeration, that's just facts. Mike Pennell is the other name that's generating a ton of buzz, and man, this one stings for Chiefs fans. Pennell was in Kansas City, he was part of the system, he knows the defense inside and out, and Chris Jones has literally been publicly campaigning to get him back. Jones straight up said, "We gotta get my dog back," when talking about Pennell. The problem is the optics on this are absolutely terrible. The Chiefs traded actual draft capital to acquire Derek Anady, then they cut Mike Pennell to keep Anady on the roster, and now Anady is the worst interior defensive lineman in the entire league, while Pennell has been solid in Cincinnati. So if Kansas City turns around and trades another draft pick to reacquire Pennell, that's essentially admitting they wasted 2 picks on one of the worst roster decisions in recent memory. The process would piss everyone off, but the result would be good because Pennell is actually productive. It's a tough pill to swallow. Looking at my options here, I honestly think Calais Campbell makes the most sense from a pure value standpoint. The price is right, the production is there, and he wouldn't require any major cap gymnastics to make it work. But if I'm being completely honest, the move that would make Chiefs Kingdom go absolutely insane would be bringing back Mike Pennell. Yeah, it would be admitting the front office screwed up, but sometimes you gotta swallow your pride and fix your mistakes. Chris Jones wants him back, the defense needs him, and he's familiar with everything Spagnuolo wants to do. I think Veach should just bite the bullet and make it happen. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, the salary cap situation, because even if Brett Veach identifies the perfect trade target, he still has to figure out how to actually afford the guy. Right now, the Chiefs are sitting on approximately $3.5 to $4 million in cap space. That's barely enough to sign a practice squad player, let alone trade for a legitimate starter. So if Veach wants to make any kind of meaningful move, he's going to have to get creative with some contract restructures. And there are really only a few guys on the roster whose deals can be manipulated to free up significant money. The most obvious candidate is right tackle Jawan Taylor and his massive 4-year $80 million contract with $60 million guaranteed. If the Chiefs convert his base salary into a signing bonus and prorate that money over the remaining years of the deal, they could potentially free up anywhere from $7 to $12.6 million, depending on how aggressive they want to get with the restructure. That's real money, enough to take on a decent player without completely destroying the 2026 cap situation. Though let's be honest, the 2026 cap situation is already destroyed, but we'll get to that nightmare in a second. The other big contract that could be restructured is Travis Kelce's deal. Kelce has a $12.5 million roster bonus that could be converted into a signing bonus and spread over 5 years, including some void years for accounting purposes. That move alone could unlock somewhere between 10 and 11.5 million in cap space, which when combined with a potential Jawan Taylor restructure would give Kansas City somewhere in the neighborhood of $17 to $24 million to work with. That's enough to take on a legitimate piece, maybe even two if they find the right deals. But here's where it gets really ugly. The Chiefs are projected to be $30 million over the salary cap in 2026, with only 35 players under contract. Read that again. They'll be $30 million over the cap and won't even have a full roster. Patrick Mahomes is carrying a $78 million cap hit that year, which obviously needs to be restructured because that's completely unsustainable. Chris Jones is sitting at $45 million, and while he'll be 33 years old by then, his deal is structured in a way where the Chiefs probably can't touch it without creating even bigger problems down the road. The next 2 years after 2026 aren't guaranteed, so Kansas City has that as a potential out, but for 2026 specifically, they're kind of stuck. What this all means is that any move Veach makes right now is going to have ripple effects that extend way beyond this season. Every dollar he spends now, every contract he restructures, all of it is just kicking money down the road and making the 2026 cap situation even more impossible to navigate. But here's the thing, when you're the Kansas City Chiefs and you've got Patrick Mahomes in his prime and you're going for a three-peat, you can't worry about 2026. You have to win now. Future, you can deal with future problems. Present, you needs to find a way to protect this championship window while it's still open. Personally, I think Veach is going to restructure Jawan Taylor's deal, but leave Kelce alone for now. Kelce's got what, maybe 2 more years left, max? Messing with his contract feels disrespectful given everything he's meant to this organization, and I don't think the Chiefs want to create any weird vibes with their greatest tight end ever. The Taylor restructure gives them enough flexibility to take on a mid-level rental without completely mortgaging the future, and that feels like the sweet spot for where this team is at right now. Here's something most people aren't talking about, but absolutely should be. The Chiefs might actually have some trade assets of their own to dangle in potential deals, and the most obvious one is cornerback Christian Fulton. Remember him? The guy they signed to a 2-year, $20 million deal this offseason with all this hype about adding veteran depth to the secondary? Yeah, he's basically been invisible. Fulton spent almost all of training camp on the physically unable to perform list, missed week 2 with an ankle injury, was a limited participant in practice for weeks 3 through 5, and then became a healthy scratch for 2 straight games. Meanwhile, 3rd-round rookie Noel Williams has absolutely stepped up, posting a 79.6 overall grade from Pro Football Focus and holding his own against some of the top receivers in the league. The writing is on the wall here. Fulton isn't part of the Chiefs' plans, at least not in any meaningful way, and his contract makes him tradable. If Kansas City moves him before week 8, they'd save $3.75 million in cap space this year, while eating $15 million in dead cap for 2025 and $8 million in 2026. That's not ideal, but if they can flip Fulton for even a late round pick and use that cap savings to help facilitate a bigger move for a defensive lineman, it makes total sense. The fact that the Chiefs elevated Kevin Knowles 3 times in 7 weeks suggests they're preparing for a corner to be moved, and Fulton is the obvious candidate. Joshua Williams is another potential trade chip. He's got 93 career tackles, 1 interception, and 18 pass deflections over his time in Kansas City, but his role has shrunk dramatically this season. The rookie contract makes him a cheap option for teams that need cornerback depth, and the Chiefs could probably get a late round pick for him without taking any significant cap hit. It's not gonna net you a first rounder or anything crazy, but when you're trying to acquire pieces, sometimes you need to move pieces out, and Williams feels expendable given how well the secondary is playing without him. Now, here's where things get spicy. One Chiefs fan threw out the idea of trading Hollywood Brown, and at first I thought that was insane, but the more I think about it, the more it kind of makes sense in a twisted way. Brown signed a 1-year deal, so he's a pure rental for whoever acquires him. He started the season hot, was Kansas City's most targeted receiver early on, but then had an absolute stinker against the 49ers with only 2 catches for 14 yards, 1 touchdown, and a fumble. His role in this offense has been mostly short to intermediate routes where his quickness creates separation, but as a deep ball vertical threat, he's been pretty limited. Meanwhile, Xavier Worthy has emerged as the true vertical weapon with his 4.2 speed, 13.3 average depth of target leading all Chiefs receivers, and 35% deep target rate that's already produced a 49-yard long and multiple explosive plays. So the argument goes like this: if Juju Smith-Schuster can seamlessly step into Brown's rotational role, which he's been doing great at anyway, why not trade Hollywood for a pick and use the cap savings to add help on the defensive line? It's cold-blooded, but it's logical. The counter-argument is that Brown's speed and separation ability could be crucial in the playoffs when you're facing elite defenses, and his experience in big moments matters. The Chiefs have rookie Jalen Royals waiting in the wings too, a guy who drew Rashee Rice comparisons coming out of college, so there's young talent ready to develop behind these veterans. I gotta be honest, I'm torn on this one. If Hollywood has another quiet game on Monday night against the Commanders, then yeah, maybe it's time to explore moving him, because it would show that Mahomes can operate just fine without him eating up targets. But if Brown bounces back and reminds everyone why Kansas City signed him in the first place, you keep him and let him cook in the playoffs. Speed kills in January, and you can never have too many guys who can take the top off a defense when the stakes are highest. One of the biggest debates happening in Chiefs Kingdom right now is what type of defensive lineman should be the priority. Do you go after a pure pass rusher to finally generate some consistent pressure, or do you target a run stuffer who can eat up blocks and keep linebackers clean? The consensus among the guys breaking down the film seems pretty clear. Pass rush is the bigger need right now. The run defense has been middle of the road, which honestly is fine when you've got Nick Bolton and Drew Tranquill playing at such a high level behind the line. Those two are excellent at cleaning up at the second level and preventing explosive runs even when the defensive line doesn't win its battles up front. But when you look ahead to the playoffs, that's when the pass rush becomes absolutely critical. The Chiefs are probably going to see Josh Allen and the Bills again in the playoffs. That matchup feels inevitable at this point. And if the Ravens can turn their season around, you're looking at Lamar Jackson extending plays with his legs and making life miserable for a defense that can't get home. When you give elite quarterbacks like Allen or Lamar all day to throw, they're going to pick you apart no matter how good your secondary is. And let's be real, Kansas City's secondary is fantastic. Pro Football Focus loves them. Chiefs fans love them. They're playing at an incredibly high level, but even the best coverage can only hold for so long before a generational quarterback finds someone open. The other thing that makes pass rush the priority is that most of Kansas City's sacks this season have been coverage sacks, or the result of Steve Spagnuolo engineering some exotic blitz with Nick Bolton or a defensive back. It's not the defensive line winning their matchups and getting home, it's the back end holding up long enough that the quarterback has nowhere to go and has to eat it or try to escape. That's not sustainable against the best offenses in football. You need actual pressure from your front four, or at least from your defensive tackles when you bring an extra rusher, and right now the Chiefs just aren't getting it outside of Chris Jones on his best best days. So yeah, if I'm Brett Veach and I can only make one move before the deadline, I'm targeting pass rush over run defense every single time. The linebackers can handle the run game well enough, and in today's NFL, championship games are decided by who can protect the quarterback and who can get to the quarterback. Everything else is secondary. I truly believe that if the Chiefs add even a decent pass rusher who can give them 8 to 10 quality pressures over the rest of the season and playoffs, that could be the difference between winning it all and going home.